they had no objections. In May of 1969, despite both the prior rejection of the bishops and mounting opposition from high-ranking members of the Curia, including the head of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, Pope Paul VI introduced his Missale Romanum, declaring that it would be put into general use on the first Sunday of Advent that year. Why do we have two Masses in the Latin Rite of the Roman Catholic Church when for over 15 centuries there was only one? How did it happen? Why did it happen? And why did it happen when it did happen? I hope that we have answered those questions to your satisfaction. The remaining question, where do we go from here, is a different matter. The tremendous push to change the Mass has advanced across the past 4 centuries despite numerous and frequent condemnations by popes. First, it was the push to get a missal into the hands of each person in church. Next came the dialogue Mass, then the vernacular Mass in various places, then the offertory procession, then the priest offering the Mass versus populum, facing the people. And all of this many decades before the Second Vatican Council. After the Council, in addition to the introduction of a new rite of the Mass, which even the Pope who introduced it called innovative, shocking, and novel, similar illegal activities pushed for the eventual approval of communion in the hand, Eucharistic ministers, communion under both kinds, altar girls, and liturgical dance. Where does the Church and the Church's liturgy go from here? Well, from all appearances, the innovation and novelty does not appear about to abate anytime soon. So your guess is easily as good as mine. Legem credendi lex statuit supplicandi. Indeed, the law of worship does set the law of faith. And just as surely, people do worship as they believe. When considering the changes in the Church over the past 40 years, and the effect those changes have had on the faithful, it is always tempting to demonize those we feel may be responsible, to pick a fall guy, whether he be Pope Paul VI or Archbishop Bugnini, or even the whole Second Vatican Council, and lay both responsibility and blame on them. Were it only so simple. In the research we have undertaken in order to complete this presentation, we too were looking for someone whose feet we could hold to the fire in this matter, but that individual does not exist. What we discovered for the most part were priests and bishops, good men, often holy men, who were concerned to see the faith wane in the faithful in their care. Men like Antonio Rosmini, a holy priest who may one day even be canonized. These considered the problems that faced them, and they proposed solutions. And in spite of the Church's consistent condemnations of almost all of their proposals across the centuries, there came a time when the proponents of these solutions finally gained ascendancy in the Church. And it gained ascendancy in the person of Pope Paul VI. He rejected the solution that had been put forth by Guéranger and the authentic liturgical movement, and merely ratified the proposals put forth across the centuries by the Jansenists and the Gallicans, by the followers of Rosmini, of Drexel, Blondel, Deschardins, Pius Parch, Odo Cassels, and Gerald Ellard. Pope Paul VI told those close to him that he wanted the Mass to more closely resemble the Calvinist worship service, as he had come to believe that in so doing, a great moment of evangelization would be forthcoming. In other words, after centuries of screaming that they had the answer to holiness, an answer different from that of Saints Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, Robert Bellarmine, Duns Scotus, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, and Popes Pius V and Pope St. Pius X, the progressivists finally got their way. And they have had their way now for the past 35 years. How is it working? How has the Church fared across the past 1/3 of a century? Are the faithful holier? Has a great moment of evangelization converted the Protestants as Pope Paul VI anticipated? Were they right or wrong? On the 25th anniversary of the introduction of Pope Paul VI's new Mass, Pope John Paul II proposed that the Mass was a sign of the new springtime for the Church. Has the new springtime come to your parish? Does the lex orandi of the new Mass reflect the same lex credendi that was reflected by the old Mass? We have answered the questions we came here to answer. These are all questions which we will leave for you. And there is yet one more question. The great Father Faber proposed that we must remember that if all the manifestly good men were on one side and all the manifestly bad men on the other, there would be no danger of anyone, least of all the elect, being deceived by lying wonders. It is the good men, good once, we must hope good still, who are to do the work of Antichrist and so sadly crucify the Lord afresh. This deceitfulness arises from good men being on the wrong side. So the question is, which side is the wrong side? We have attempted to provide this information as honestly and as even-handedly as possible. Do with it what you will. And the next time someone tells you that the new Mass was the brainchild of the Second Vatican Council, you might respond, "I'd like to tell you a story."